Hello and welcome to the fourth grade channel of Sun Devil Learning Labs. I am Mrs. Khan. Let's get started. So today's topic for our lesson is secondhand account, right? Yesterday with Miss Holman, you went over firsthand account. All right, so let's talk about our objective. The objective for today is I can recognize a secondhand account along with the key characteristics of a secondhand account, right? Do you want to take a moment and read that to yourself? Read it out loud and really try to establish that as your goal for today's learning, all right? Let's continue. Talking about secondhand account, we need to first go over firsthand account, right? You went over this yesterday with Miss Holman. This is actually information that was pulled from her presentation, right? So just as a review, firsthand account is similar to first-person point of view. And if we remember, first-person point of view is when the author is writing from their point of view or perspective, and the main character is usually telling the story, right? A first-hand account is a text told by someone who was there at the time of the event being written about. If you think about it, it's straight from the source, right? And first-hand accounts told by a person who was part of the action include the person's feelings and opinions about the topic, right? Looking at second-hand account, this is from Miss Holman's presentation for you, right? Second-hand account is similar to third-person point of view, right? We went over point of view at the beginning of the week. And thinking about third-person point of view, remember that it's when the narrator is someone outside of the story and not a character, right? A second-hand account, right, is when the person writing the text is not part of the events, right? The author describes what happened or is happening to someone else. And it mostly includes information and facts about the subject of the text, right? So when we look at our focus for firsthand and secondhand account, for firsthand account, our focus of the text is told by someone that was actually there. And in a secondhand account, the focus of a text is told by someone who was not there at the time of the event, right? So if we think to ourselves, how would the text that we're reading, say it's a firsthand account text, right, be different if it was retold by another person who wasn't there, right? The information in the retold story would not be based off an actual experience. It would instead be based on learned information, right? Secondhand accounts may lack emotion and feeling that firsthand accounts include, right? And if you think about that in the reverse, think of a secondhand account and how would it be different if it was told by someone who was actually there, right? The information would be based off of eyewitness or experience, right? And the information would be told with more emotion and feelings and opinions, right? So that's our little bit of review from what Ms. Holman told you yesterday. So let's focus on secondhand account, right? So why are secondhand accounts important, right? They can be found in nonfiction and informational texts. And secondhand accounts can give facts and details into history and what famous people throughout history have lived through based on research, right? With secondhand accounts, we utilize information from several sources, and the information is coming from firsthand and secondhand accounts of the event, right? Right, so looking at our definition of nonfiction text and informational text, we just mentioned those. Nonfiction text is a text that includes real-life situations and factual information, right? Usually has a purpose to express or inform. And informational text is nonfiction writing written with the purpose to inform the reader about a specific topic, right? So What do we learn and gain through secondhand accounts? What do you think, right? We can learn from the third person point of view that secondhand accounts are in, allowing us to view the event from an outside perspective without the emotions and feelings of individuals, right? And we can learn the key facts and information from the event. And we gain information from several different sources, right? It's not just one person's account of what happened, right? All right, so when we are looking at our text and trying to figure out if it's a secondhand account, we're looking for our clue words, right? Our clue words are all of the words that we can look for in a text to help us determine if it is a secondhand account, right? And those words are he, she, they, them, it, and names, right? We want to keep an eye out for these words when identifying a secondhand account, right? And these clue words might look familiar because we learned them earlier in the week, right? These are the clue words that we also use to identify a third person point of view in fictional stories, right? Right, so think about secondhand accounts, right? What type of text is a secondhand account? An easy shortcut to figure out what is a secondhand account versus a firsthand account. Some examples are encyclopedias, textbooks, biographies, which are an account of a person's life written by another person, right? If we were reading a biography on my life, I wouldn't have written it. It would have been written by someone else, right? Other examples of secondhand accounts are books, movies, newspaper, and magazine articles, right? Can you think of any secondhand accounts that you've read? I can think of a few. All right, so let's keep going. Let's practice figuring out our secondhand account, all right? First, I want you to draw your graphic organizer, right? So here is our graphic organizer. Pretty simple to draw out. If you have a lined piece of paper, you can just fold it down the middle, right? Fold it in half. And then on your left side of the fold, write which point of view is each account written from, right? We're going to have a first-hand account and a second-hand account, right? What point of view is each of them written in, right? And then how do you know? What are your clue words, right? We are going to have two passages and they're labeled account 1 and account 2, right? Then afterwards, we're going to compare and contrast the accounts. How are they similar and how are they different, right? So hit pause, fill out your graphic organizer so that it kind of looks like this, and then we'll keep going. All right, so hit pause now and fill that out. All right, so let's keep going. Here are our two passages that we're going to look at for firsthand and secondhand account, right? The title is Arrival in the New World. Account number 1, the passage reads, a group of adventurers, including a man named John Smith, set sail for America on December 19th, 1606. Eventually, they made it across the Atlantic Ocean and stopped to rest on some islands south of the modern-day mainland of the United States. The adventurers and settlers soon set off from the mainland of what they called the New World. John Smith and the rest of the crew searched and searched, but for 3 days could find no place to land their ship. The ship captain became discouraged and considered turning back to England and giving up. The crew continued on, though, and by God's providence found a place to land. 33 of the men left the ship to explore the land, but were attacked by 5 Native Americans who did not want visitors to their home. 2 of the crew members were hurt badly from the attack. Settling the New World was not going to be easy. All right. And account number 2, the passage reads, On the 19th of December, 1606, we set sail. We watered in the Canaries. We traded with the savages at Dominica. 3 weeks we spent refreshing ourselves amongst these West India isles. We were discomforted, seeing the mariners had found no land in 3 days. Captain Radcliffe rather desired to return to England than make further search. But God did drive them by his providence to his desired port. When anchoring, Mr. Wingfield, Gosnold, and Newport, with 30 others, were assaulted by 5 savages who hurt 2 of the English very dangerously. All right, so at this point, hit pause, decide which account is our secondhand account, right? Before you can do that, figure out what point of view each one is written in. And you can look for your clue words and write those down, right? On your graphic organizer, that would be on the right-hand side. All right, so hit pause and do that now. All right, so let's take a look at my notes for this of what you would be doing, right? I have our first passage, account number 1, is a second-hand account because our clue words, the ones that I found, are they. They is the clue word for a third-person point of view. All right. And our second account, our second passage, is a first-hand account because the clue word that I found was we. And we is a clue word for first-person point of view, which is a first-hand account. All right. So if you want to hit pause and finish filling out your graphic organizer, go ahead and do that now. All right, so let's look at our graphic organizer, all right? All right, so here is my graphic organizer that I filled out, right? Our top left is our question of what point of view is each account written from? All right, our first-hand account is written in first-person point of view, right? And the passage that is in first-person point of view was our second one, account number 2. And because it's in first-person point of view, it's our first-hand account, right? And our second-hand account is written in third-person point of view, right? Our passage that's in third-person point of view was account number 1. So that one is our second-hand account, all right? When we answer the question, how do you know what are your clue words? Our first passage, if we look back at it, right, the clue words were they, and then there were names, right? That's how I know that it was a third-person point of view and a second-hand account, right? And account number 2, right, our second passage, the clue words were we. There were several of the word we in the second passage, right? And we is a clue word for first-person point of view, so that was our first-hand account, right? All right, so compare and contrast the accounts, right? How are they similar? How are they different? You might have different answers than me, and that's okay, right? Similarities for me, the one that I found, was that both accounts are about arriving in the new world, right? What would become the United States. And a difference that I found was that the first-hand account spoke harsher of the Native Americans than the second-hand account, right? Hopefully that helps you solidify a little bit more the difference between first-hand and second-hand account and how they can be similar and how they can be different, all right? So what I want you to do now is I want you to try this on your own, right? If you need to draw out your graphic organizer again, go ahead and do that. Here is an example of it again. If you want to do that, hit pause, draw out your graphic organizer, right? So hit pause now and do that. All right, so let's continue on. What I want you to do is you're going to choose and read a set of texts, all right? They come in pairs. I have 2 sets. You're going to pick one set to do. And I want you to use your graphic organizer to sort your thoughts and your explanations, right? And decide which of the texts is the secondhand account, all right? Fill in your whole graphic organizer the way we just did, and then mark on it which one is the secondhand account, all right? So here is our first set. Our first set is titled September 11th, all right? All right, so this is our first passage, account number 1, and it reads, "The news anchor sat straight, reporting only the facts of the event that had just occurred. There were reports that something had hit the World Trade Center. Flames were shooting from the building and rescue crews were beginning to arrive. Quickly, reports began coming in that it had been a plane. The reporter spoke calmly, describing the scene to viewers as he had heard it from people calling the news station. Suddenly, video of the burning building came on the screen and the reporter's eyes widened. He knew he would be reporting on this story for a long time to come." All right, hit pause if you want to reread that. Really figure out what point of view it's written in. Look for your clue words and then decide if it's first-hand account or second-hand account in your graphic organizer. All right, hit pause if you're going to do that now. All right, so let's look at our second passage. Our second passage, or account number 2, reads, "Something has happened. There was a noise unlike any I had ever heard before. There was smoke billowing out of the World Trade Center, and there was a loud explosion. All I can see is smoke and fire. The sound of rescue sirens is getting closer, but none of us seem to know what exactly is going on. The smoke is getting thicker, and there seems to be a hole inside of the building. Did something just explode inside the building? What caused this fire? Wait, someone is telling me there was a plane. How could there be a plane in the building? We need to get away from here." All right, you can hit pause if you want to reread that one. Decide if it is in first-person point of view or third-person point of view. Look for your clue words and decide if it is a first-hand account or a second-hand account in your graphic organizer. All right. If you don't want to do this set, let's look at our second set. Our second set is titled Titanic Sinks. All right. Here is our first passage, account number 1, and it reads, "After striking an iceberg, the Titanic sank in the early morning hours of April 15th, 1912. Within minutes of hitting the iceberg, shipbuilders knew that the damage was too severe and the ship would sink. As water filled the lower levels, the crew calmly guided passengers to lifeboats on the deck. Women and children were boarded onto the lifeboats first, with most passengers carrying only a coat and the life jacket. Many third-class passengers were unable to reach the deck where the lifeboats were. In addition, there were not enough lifeboats on board to save all the passengers. Over 1,500 people died when the ship sank that night." All right, go ahead and hit pause if you want to reread that. Decide if it is in first-person point of view or third-person point of view, and look for your clue words, right? And then when you've done that, decide if it's first-hand account or second-hand account. All right, use your graphic organizer. Hit pause if you're going to do that. Let's look at our second passage. Our second passage, account number 2, reads, "An awful rumbling sound came from below my bed. Seconds later, I could hear water pouring into my cabin. Jumping down from my bunk bed, my feet were covered in the cold water. I dropped my backpack and headed for the stairwell to the deck. I checked the main set of stairs, but they were blocked by a locked gate. I raced to the other stair only to find them locked. A group of other third-class passengers had gathered and were calling out for help. We could see the water rising, and the only way we were going to survive was to break the gates open. Frantic, we began looking for another way to the boat deck. By the time we found our way, it was too late. The lifeboats were gone, and we knew the only way we would be able to save ourselves was to swim in the frigid waters." All right, go ahead and hit pause if you want to reread that. decide if this is in first person point of view or third person point of view. Look for your clue words, and then decide if it is a first-hand account or second-hand account. All right, remember to use your graphic organizer. All right, go ahead and hit pause now. All right, let's move on. All right, so your task was to choose and read a set of texts, right? You should have used your graphic organizer to sort your thoughts and explanations and then decide which of the texts, right, is the second-hand account. And you just marked it on your graphic organizer, right? Hopefully you got yours all filled out, just like we did with our New World set, right? All right, so let's move on. This is our extra practice section. If you want to skip over it and just go to our wrap up for the day, you can go ahead and do that. All right. So with our extra practice, this is just more sets for you to be able to compare the first-hand and second-hand accounts. All right. You can use your graphic organizer to do that. All right. So here is your graphic organizer. If you want to draw it out, go ahead and do that. On the top left, the question asks, what point of view is each account written from, right? What point of view is first-hand account written from, and what point of view is second-hand account written from, right? And then decide which of the passages in your set that you're choosing is your first-hand account and your second-hand account, right? And then we'll move on to the right-hand side with that and answer the question, how do you know, right? What are your clue words? So whatever you decide for your first passage or account number 1, you would write if it was your first-hand or second-hand account, and then share your clue words that you found, right? And then do the same thing for your account number 2 or your second passage, right? And then once you have the top part finished, on the bottom half, you would compare and contrast the accounts, all right? How are they similar and how are they different? So you would write something that's similar between them under similarities and something that's different between them under differences, all right? So let's look at these sets. There are 3 sets. All right, so using that graphic organizer, I want you to, in this bonus practice, choose and read one of the text sets, right? There are 3 of them that you're going to have an option to choose, and sort out your thoughts and explanations the way we did at the beginning, right? And then decide which of the texts is the second-hand account. You can also just make sure that you are marking which of the passages is first-hand and which one is second-hand. That works too. All right, so let's look at our texts, right? Our first set is titled Helen Keller, right? Our first passage, account number 1, reads, we walked down the path to the well house, attracted by the fragrance of the honeysuckle with which it was covered. Someone was drawing water, and my teacher placed my hand under the spout. As the cool stream gushed over one hand, she spelled into the other the word water, first slowly, then rapidly. I stood still, my whole attention fixed upon the motions of her fingers. Suddenly, I felt a misty consciousness as of something forgotten, a thrill of returning thought, and somehow the mystery of language was revealed to me. I knew then that WATER meant the wonderful, cool something that was flowing over my hand. That living word awakened my soul, gave it light, hope, joy, set it free. All right, if you want to hit pause and reread that, look for your clue words to decide your point of view, and then from there, decide if it's your first-hand account or second-hand account, right? And here is our second passage, account number 2, and it reads, in a dramatic struggle, Sullivan taught Keller the word water. She helped her make the connection between the object and the letters by taking Keller out to the water pump and placing her hand under the spout. While Sullivan moved the lever to flush cool water over Keller's hand, she spelled out the word WATER on Helen's other hand. Something clicked. Helen finally understood what Annie was doing. She repeated the word on Sullivan's hand. An entire new world opened up for Keller. In many ways, it was one of the happiest days of her life. All right, go ahead and hit pause, reread that, and decide what point of view it's in by looking for your clue words, and then decide if it's a first-person account or a second-person account, all right? If you don't want to do that set, let's move on to our next one, right? This set is titled Beyonce, right? Our first passage, our account number 1 reads, R&B superstar singer Beyonce paid a surprise visit to Bell Elementary School in West Philadelphia on April 7th, 2015. This was not her first visit to Philadelphia, as she is in town for her 2015 tour, but it was her first visit to a Philadelphia school. She spoke to students during a school-wide assembly. The topics she discussed were the importance of coming to school daily and on time, respecting yourself and others, and making good choices. She also spoke about the importance of being committed to your dreams. Beyonce shook hands with the 2 top students of each class and posed for pictures with these students. She sang Survivor and left an autographed award for the school. All right, go ahead and hit pause on that one. Look for your clue words and decide what point of view it's in. And then from there, decide if it is a first-hand account or second-hand account, right? Here's our second passage, account number 2, and it reads, Yesterday, Beyonce visited our school. We were curious when Principal Brown announced during morning announcements that we would have a special guest at our monthly assembly. It turned out to be Beyonce. When she appeared on stage, applause and cheering filled the auditorium. I almost fell out of my seat when I saw her. Even some of the teachers like Miss Harris and Miss Williams were jumping up and down with excitement. Guess what? Beyonce is prettier in real life than she is on TV. It turned out that Beyonce was not there to sing, but we were still excited anyway. She spoke to us about her life and said it is important to work hard, especially when you don't feel like it. Sometimes she does not feel like practicing her dance moves, singing, or exercising and would rather stay in bed. She also shook hands with 2 students from each class who had the highest grades, best attendance, and behavior. My cousin in 5th grade was one of the kids who got to shake her hand. I was so proud of my cousin. I wished I was on stage meeting her. We were so inspired and motivated. And of course, I couldn't wait to go home to tell everyone that I knew that Beyonce visited our school. All right, go ahead and hit pause on that one. Look for your clue words and decide if it's in first-person point of view or third-person point of view. And from there, decide if it is a first-hand account or second-hand account, right? If you don't want to do those ones, here is our third set, right? These ones are titled Colorado Wildfires, right? Our first passage, account number 1, reads, In the summer of 2013, many major wildfires took place across the state of Colorado. Dry conditions and very high temperatures made the fires spread quickly and over large areas of land. The fires affected many towns and people. Thousands of people even had to evacuate or leave their homes for safety. 473 homes were destroyed by these fires, and 2 people lost their lives. Over 800 firefighters and other rescue workers went to work to help control and stop the fires. The fires were hard to stop because the land made it difficult for crews to reach the fires. Crews used airplanes and helicopters to help control the fires. By the end of the summer, all of the Colorado wildfires were completely contained. Already in March, officials are making plans to help control any fires that may occur in the summer of 2014. Right? Go ahead and hit pause. Look for your clue words to figure out what point of view it's in, right? First person point of view or third person point of view. And from there, decide if it is a first-hand account or second-hand account, all right? Let's look at our second passage. Account number 2, and it reads, During the first summer that we lived in Boulder, we had a new type of experience that we did not have in Chicago. On June 12th, we heard about the summer's first wildfire near Royal Gorge, Colorado. We were not very concerned about it since it was far away from us. Within the next 10 days, though, many other wildfires began in Colorado, including some that were closer to us. We heard about friends in other cities who needed to evacuate. They were very scared and did not know what would happen to their homes. We watched the fire maps every day, and we were nervous about the fires coming closer to our city. The closest fire to us was a wildfire in Lime Gulch, about 200 miles southwest of us. That sounds far away, but many of the fires were spreading so fast. I had a travel bag packed just in case we needed to leave our home on short notice. This was a scary first summer for us living in Boulder. We quickly learned to be prepared for wildfires at any time during the summer. All right, go ahead and hit pause, reread that one. Look for your clue words to figure out what point of view it is, first person or third person. And then from there, decide if it is a first-hand account or second-hand account. All right? Hopefully with those bonus practice sets, right, you were able to choose and read a text set and use your graphic organizer to sort through your thoughts and explanations and then decide which of the texts was a second-hand account, right? All right, so this is the end of our lesson. Let's wrap up, right? Today we learned what a second-hand account is, right? We also learned the key characteristics of a second-hand account and how we as readers can tell when a text is second-hand, right? And then we also learned how to analyze a text that is a second-hand account, focusing on key details and information, right? And lastly, we learned the differences between a first-hand account and a second-hand account. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day.